Are you having trouble deciding if you're an ISFP or an ISTP? Well, everybody wants a nice little checklist, right? Like, if you eat with a fork and drive with your left hand on the steering wheel, then you're this type. But if you prefer the color white over the color green, then you're that type. It's just not that simple. It's never going to be that simple. Everybody does everything. So what you can do is look for generalisms. You can look for things that people tend to do and say, that type tends to be more that way. That type tends toward that way of thinking. That type tends toward that way of living. When you accumulate enough of these generalisms, you start to be able to hone in a little bit on someone. Now, there's one of these generalisms that I'd like to share with you that can help you to just examine the possibilities when you're trying to determine ISFP, ISTP. Okay, so I have a relative who I believe firmly is an ISTP. This relative is very skilled in automotive repair and helps me a great deal when I need help in that area. Now, when I go to this relative's house and work on a vehicle there at his house, he has every tool. And he knows exactly which tool to use for which job. And he sees things in a very, this is the right way. And he looks at things in a, well, let's find out what the official correct way of doing this is. And then to the best of our ability, let's try to do the thing the official way with the correct tool. And I know precisely where that tool is. I can go right to it with no difficulty. And I will go get that one tool so that we can do that one task in the prescribed way that it was meant to be done. Now, does he ever improvise 100% when it's necessary? Does he ever do things in the way that is not the official expected way? Yes, when he must, when it's necessary. But that is not his default setting. His default setting is not, let's just figure it out. Let's just try to make this thing work. Let's just grab up a whole handful of tools and carry them over to the job, and we'll figure out which one works in the moment. His default setting is not, well, let's just take this thing apart, and as we go, we'll figure out how it was built, and then we'll be able to put it back together. His default setting is not, I don't know what the manual says, or I haven't watched any videos or read any tutorials on how to do this thing, but I'm sure we can figure out how to make it work. None of those are his default setting. None of them. That is contrasted dramatically with the way I do things. Now, do I ever watch tutorial videos before I attempt a task? Yes. More so now at the age of 48, almost 49, than I did for most of my life, and largely because I have observed the wisdom in it when other people do it. But it's not my default setting. My default setting is very much, I just want to go tackle the problem. I just want to go figure it out. I don't know. I don't know what to do. I haven't watched the manual, or I haven't read the manual. I haven't watched the video, but I'll figure it out as I go. My default setting is not, let's find out what the manufacturer says. Let's figure out what the official brochure educates, or teaches us to do. My default setting is not, let's read the instructions. But rather, my default setting is, let's just go attack the thing. Let's figure it out. My default setting is not, we're going to need these two exact tools. my default setting is let's go grab up a whole bunch of tools and I might need this and I might need that and I'll probably need this and I'm not sure about this. I'll just throw all these in a bag or I'll come walking in carrying them all as best as I can and I'll pitch them down on the floor by the job site where I'm going to be working and hopefully I'll have what I need when I get into it. And when I don't, frustrated that I don't, I'll get up and I'll go get the tool. Although, interestingly enough, I find myself trying to improvise with the tool that I have pulled out or the tools that I've pulled out, even though I know none of them are the right tool and even though I know I have the right tool. I will often not want to stand up and walk over to the place where I keep the tools and find the correct tool and use it, even though, honestly, this is the truth. I know if I would just get up and go get the correct tool and come back and use the correct tool, that I would get the job done faster, including travel time there, than it will take me trying to figure it out with the tools that I chose to bring to the work spot. It's not really very intelligent when I think about it or say it out loud, but it is the truth. It's what I do. My default setting is not make sure we understand exactly what tool we'll need for the project and get that tool, but rather just grab up a bunch of tools and hope that we have the right one when we get into the job. Now, am I as bad about that as I used to be? No, not always. Why? Well, because I have observed the wisdom of introverted thinking in action. I have seen the people who go and make sure they have the right tool before they ever even get started. And honestly, I have seen one particular INFP that I know who, even though she has inferior extroverted thinking, just like I do, or fourth slot extroverted thinking, just like I do, she's just smarter, I guess, than I am. And she does it right, usually. She usually takes the time to make sure she has the correct tool. And that could be her introverted sensing, which I don't have, that organizes things in the physical world much better. So this can be born out of introverted sensing for those people who have extroverted intuition, or it could be born out of introverted thinking for those people who have introverted thinking and extroverted feeling. I don't have either one. I have introverted feeling / extroverted thinking. I'm figuring it out as I go. Extroverted sensing wants to just take things as they come, breathe it all in, figure it all out, live in the moment, not a lot of planning. Third slot introverted intuition, which ISTPs also have, doesn't always want to plan very well. But when you combine third slot introverted intuition in the ISFP with that second slot extroverted sensing, you have someone who doesn't particularly want to plan very well, doesn't plan very well, combined with the extroverted sensing that just wants to go and do and attack. And then you combine all of that with the extroverted thinking in the fourth slot, so it's quite weak. That's just like, we'll figure it out as we go. We'll just grab up the thing. We don't know exactly how it works, but we'll just throw things at the wall and see what sticks. You put all that together, and it's a real recipe in the ISFP for not really properly preparing to do a job. Now, for those who have, like an INFP, that have that third slot SI, introverted sensing, if that's something that they cultivate a little better, then they can turn that into organization in the physical world. I'll make sure that I have the right tool. I'll make sure that I have everything in order before I start the job. Even an ISFP with that third slot introverted intuition, if he or she cultivates that, can be a better planner. I can plan this task better. But with the ISTP, that first slot introverted thinking, it's very focused on doing things the right way, knowing all of the details that are necessary to understand the machine, the situation, the task, reading the manual, watching the instruction videos, preparing the job site, and bringing the correct tools to the job site. Even though they have that third slot introverted intuition, so maybe planning isn't their most favorite thing in the world, although that third slot tends to be a hobby function, so for some it will be. They will enjoy planning and they will do better at it. For me, it's not much of a hobby function. I use it more in the metaphysical world than the planning world. I use introverted intuition a lot more for narrowing down on ideas than for planning things in the physical world. Let me say it that way. But those with SI somewhere or TI somewhere in the top 4 slots are going to have sort of an advantage. Now, ISTPs don't have introverted sensing. They have extroverted sensing as well. Pardon me, my nose itches. ISTPs don't have the introverted sensing. So they're not particularly, the best in the world at organizing the physical world. And yet they are. They do an excellent job of organizing the physical world, but not out of that introverted sensing need for it, but rather out of that introverted thinking functionality for it. They know things work better when you do them correctly. The other day I was having a quasi meltdown over our washer not working. And other people in the house were like, well, what does the manual say? And I'm like, I shouldn't need a washing machine with a manual. It should be something that's so simple I can just press the button and it'll do what it's supposed to do. I don't want my washing machine to have a computer in it. I don't want it to be that intelligent. I don't want it to be that complicated. I don't want to have to understand and think through all of the, well, what order do you press the buttons in? And what order do you do all this in? And what's going to happen? I just want it to be obvious. My inferior extroverted thinking just wants it to be obvious. I ought to be able to just walk up to it and figure it out. And I can't. And I can't with a whole lot of things either. So anyway, the point of all of this is to say that if you're not sure if you're an ISFP or an ISTP, this could be an area for you to look at. How do you handle situations where you have to get a job done? Do you find yourself prepared or unprepared? Do you think I'll figure it out as I go, or I need to read the manual, I need to make sure I know exactly what I'm supposed to do? Do you think I'm smart enough I'll get this, or I need to know what the manufacturer officially says? Do you think I'll grab the tool when I need it, or I'll figure out the tools along the way, or I'll just grab a big old handful of tools and bring them to the job, and I'm sure one of them will be right? Or do you always make sure that you have the right tool for the job? When you don't have the right tool for the job, do you stop and say, I can't complete the job, I need to get the right tool? Or do you say, I'll figure it out with whatever the heck I have laying around here? I know I need a Phillips screwdriver, but I'm sure this hammer will work. Something crazy like that. Which way do you lean? Now, this is not automatically, if you do one or the other, that you're automatically an ISFP or an ISTP. I don't mean that. But if you think that you are one of those two and you're trying to decide between the two of them, ISFP or ISTP, that is a place to look. It is not a guarantee. Perhaps when you were growing up, one of your parents was super organized and drilled you every day on being properly organized and always having the right tool and all those things. And so that's a lesson that you learned when you were young. And so even though you're not wired to do it necessarily, you do it. Or maybe, even though you are wired to do it, maybe you're an ISTP and you're wired to do it, you grew up in a place where nothing was ever right, nothing was ever in the right place, and you caught bad habits. Although what I find is usually it's not about catching bad habits. It's about how are you wired. In other words, an ISTP who's raised in a house that's absolute chaos and nobody ever knows how to do anything right and nobody ever has the correct tool will not catch that habit and be like, well, that's how I live too, because that's how I was raised. But rather they're going to look at that and go, well, that was horrible and miserable. I'm not going to do that. Again, there are always exceptions. Everybody does everything. But this might help you, or at least give you some things to consider when you're trying to figure out which one of these two, ISFP or ISTP, am I? Thanks for watching.